नमस्कार। आज का ये सत्र किस टॉपिक पर है उससे पहले ये जरूर समझ रही हूँ कि दिस इज रियली अ हॉट टॉपिक। एटमॉस्फेयर इतना गर्म हो रखा है कि हम ये समझ सकते हैं कि कुछ बहुत ही दिलचस्प हम लोग इस बारे में डिस्कस करने वाले हैं। और आज हम अपने इस सत्र में देश की सीमाओं को पार करके कहाँ तक पहुंची है हमारी सोच, हमारा साहित्य, हमारा लेखन, हमारी वैचारिकता, इस पर बात करेंगे। आज ये सत्र जो कि साहित्य की सार्वभौमिकता, यूनिवर्सलिटी ऑफ लिटरेचर एंड शेयर्ड ह्यूमन एक्सपीरियंसेस, इस पर बेस्ड है। मुझे लग रहा है कि हमारा साहित्य कहीं तक जाता हो न जाता हो, लेकिन खेल जरूर जाता है। और आज शायद ये खेल की वजह है कि जो यहाँ पर सीटें कम दिखाई दे रही हैं, बट दिस इज अ फैक्ट, वी मस्ट एक्सेप्ट इट। आज जब हम इस विषय पर बात करने जा रहे हैं तो इस सत्र की अध्यक्षता करने के लिए हमारे बीच अमरेंद्र खटुआ जी हैं। हम उन्हें आदर से मंच पर बुलाना चाहते हैं और तालियों के बीच में बताना चाहूंगी कि अमरेंद्र खटुआ जी सेवानिवृत्त राजनयिक हैं। आप आलेख अंग्रेजी, ओडिया, हिंदी और स्पेनिश में आपके आलेख प्रकाशित होते हैं। आपकी 30 से अधिक पुस्तकें प्रकाशित हो चुकी हैं, जिसमें कविता संग्रह 30 नहीं, अच्छा 30 से अधिक तो कविता संग्रह ही हैं, 15 से अधिक अन्य साहित्यिक और व्यावसायिक ग्रंथ हैं। आपकी नवीनतम प्रकाशित कृतियों में प्रमुख हैं एक्नॉलेजिंग लॉस, वो 2023 में आई थी, गार्डन ऑफ एन्चांटेड स्टोन्स एंड अदर पोएम्स, इन लव एंड अदर पोएम्स ओडिया में, डिवोशनल पोएट्री ऑफ इंडिया एंड सॉन्ग्स ऑफ पेरिग्रिनेट्स, संपादित ग्रंथ है ये। इस तरह से बहुत सी किताबें आपकी आ चुकी हैं, जिसका प्रमुख भारतीय और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय भाषाओं में अनुवाद हो चुका है। आपका इस मंच पर बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। हमारे बीच डायना मिकेविच ने लिथुआनिया से हमारे बीच हैं, उनको मैं मंच पर आदर के साथ बुलाना चाहूँगी। आप भारत में लिथुआनिया की वर्तमान राजदूत हैं, राजनयिक के रूप में आपको 28 वर्षों का अनुभव प्राप्त है। आप चीन में लिथुआनिया की राजदूत के रूप में और यूरोप परिषद, स्टारबर्ग्स, भारत में लिथुआनिया के दूतावास के रूप में आपने अपनी सेवाएँ दी हैं। इसके साथ ही आपको लैटिन अमेरिका, अफ्रीका, एशिया और प्रशांत विभाग में लिथुआनिया के विदेश मंत्रालय से भी कई वर्षों का अनुभव प्राप्त है। भारतीय अध्ययनों पर कई अकादमिक लेखों के साथ-साथ आपकी ऑल ऑफ माय इंडियाज़ नामक पुस्तक भी प्रकाशित है, जिसमें इंडो यूरोपियन अध्ययन और ऐतिहासिक लिथुआनिया भारत संबंधों का विवेचन है। आप अंग्रेजी, फ्रेंच, रूसी भाषा में पारंगत हैं। इसके अलावा आपने हिंदी, स्पेनिश, मैड्रिन और संस्कृत का भी अध्ययन किया है। आपका इस मंच पर बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है। हमारे बीच जुआन एंटोनियो मार्च पुयोल स्पेन से पधारे हैं। आई एम रियली सॉरी अगर मेरा उच्चारण कहीं गलत हो तो प्लीज़ पार्डन मी फॉर दैट। आप अनुभवी स्पेनिश राजनयिक और प्रख्यात लेखक हैं। कई प्रमुख अंतर्राष्ट्रीय पदों पर कार्य करने के साथ आप रूस, तुर्कमेनिस्तान, उज़्बेकिस्तान, बेलारूस और आर्मेनिया में स्पेन के राजदूत के रूप में काम कर चुके हैं। आप जिनेवा में संयुक्त राष्ट्र और विश्व व्यापार संगठन में भी स्पेन का प्रतिनिधित्व कर चुके हैं। वर्तमान में आप फंडासियन ऑनवर्ड के अध्यक्ष और बार्सिलोना, स्पेन में एसीजा में पार्टनर हैं। आपकी कई उल्लेखनीय कृतियों में मोमेंटम, एन एल अम्ब्रल डेल नुएवो मुंडो और एल एस्पेशियो इबे रोमो कॉर्नियो शामिल है। आप मॉस्को स्थित कई प्रतिष्ठित विश्वविद्यालयों द्वारा डॉक्टर की मानद उपाधि से सम्मानित हैं। आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है। कुछ नामों को पढ़ते हुए मतलब ऑनेस्टली स्पीकिंग मुझे ऑल इंडिया रेडियो का ऑडिशन याद आ गया जिसमें टंग ट्विस्टर्स दिए जाते थे और देखा जाता था कि आप बोल पाते हैं कि नहीं। हमारे बीच लक्ष्मी पुरी जी हैं। आप संयुक्त राष्ट्र की सहायक महासचिव और यूएन विमेन की उप कार्यकारी निदेशक भी हैं, जो लैंगिक समानता और महिलाओं के सशक्तिकरण के लिए संयुक्त राष्ट्र की संस्था है। आप अपने कार्य जीवन के दौरान आपने शांति और सुरक्षा, मानवाधिकार और सतत विकास के संदर्भ में लैंगिक समानता और महिलाओं के सशक्तिकरण के एजेंडे को विभिन्न क्षमताओं में बढ़ावा दिया है। आपने विशेष रूप से नागरिक समाज और महिलाओं के संगठन के साथ रणनीतिक साझेदारी बनाने के प्रयासों का नेतृत्व किया है। आपका इस पर बहुत अच्छा। हमारे बीच मोनिका ब्रोवाचिक पोलैंड से आपका भी इस मंच पर बहुत स्वागत है। आपने वारसा यूनिवर्सिटी से हिंदी साहित्य में पीएचडी की उपाधि प्राप्त की है। मुझे बड़ा अच्छा लग रहा है मुँह से हिंदी सुनते हुए। वर्तमान में एडम मिकेविज यूनिवर्सिटी पोज़नान, पोलैंड में एसोसिएट प्रोफेसर और दक्षिण एशियाई अध्ययन विभाग की प्रमुख के रूप में कार्यरत हैं। आपने पोलिश से हिंदी में 2 कृतियों का सह-अनुवाद, हरिवंशराय बच्चन की चयनित कविताओं के एक खंड का हिंदी से पोलिश में संपादन और सह-अनुवाद तथा एक शैक्षणिक पत्रिका ट्राका एंडोलॉजिक्स स्टडीज़ के एक खंड का सह-संपादन किया है। आपकी नैरेटिंग सेल्स, वीमेन ऑटोबायोग्राफीज़ इन हिंदी पुस्तकें प्रकाशित हैं और विभिन्न अंतर्राष्ट्रीय स्तरों पर प्रशंसित पत्रिकाओं में आपके शोध लेख प्रकाशित हुए हैं। आपको विश्व हिंदी सम्मान से सम्मानित किया गया है। आपका बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है। पवन के वर्मा जी का नाम मैं देखूँ तो मुझे दिखाई दे नहीं। पवन है। बिल्कुल, और उसकी बहुत ज़रूरत लग रही है हमें यहाँ पर पवन की कमी लग रही है। हमारे बीच विजय कुमार तड़ाक मल्ला जी भारत से, आपका भी बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है सर। वर्तमान में बिट्स पिलानी हैदराबाद कैंपस में अंग्रेजी साहित्य पढ़ाते हैं। पूर्व में आप उस्मानिया विश्वविद्यालय हैदराबाद में अंग्रेजी विभाग के प्रोफेसर और विभागाध्यक्ष तथा कला संकाय के डीन रह चुके हैं। आपकी प्रकाशित कृतियों में इंडियन लैंग्वेजेज़ इन द डायस्पोरा और इंग्लिश एंड अदर इंटरनेशनल लैंग्वेजेज़ जैसे आलोचनात्मक अध्ययन और तेलुगु से अनुवाद किया हुआ वोल्गा द लिबरेशन ऑफ सीता आदि शामिल हैं। एक टीईडीएक्स वक्ता विजय जी साहित्यिक ई जर्नल न्यूज़ इंडिया के संस्थापक संपादक हैं। आपका इस मंच पर बहुत-बहुत स्वागत है सर। और ये हमारा पैनल है। आप सभी का इस पूरे पैनल का मैं बहुत स्वागत करती हूँ। प्लीज़ हैव अ सीट। और हमारे मंच पे दूसरी तरफ मैं उतने ही व्यक्तियों को देख रही हूँ, उतने दमदार शख्सियतें मेरे सामने। आप सभी का भी बहुत-बहुत अभिनंदन करती हूँ। सुनैना जी हमारे सामने पूरा एक विमेन एम्पावरमेंट को वो रिप्रेज़ेंट कर रही हैं, अनामिका जी हैं, रेखा जी हैं, सभी लेडीज़ ख़ास करके मैं देख रही हूँ यहाँ पर हमारे अकादमी के सचिव श्री निवास राव जी बैठे हुए हैं और जिनके मैं नाम नहीं जानती हूँ, लेकिन इन 3 दिनों में हम बहुत फ़ैमिलियर हो चुके हैं। उन सबका बहुत-बहुत अभिनंदन और स्वागत। आज का जो विषय है, हमारे पास समय कम है, लेकिन यही तो मज़ा होता है, कम समय में जब आप ऊँची दूरी तय करनी होती है, तो हम वायुयान की गति से जाते हैं। आई एम फ्रॉम एयर इंडिया। दैट्स इट। तो अपनी-अपनी सीटों की पेटियाँ बाँध के हम बहुत तेज़ रफ़्तार से आगे बढ़ने वाले हैं और देश की कई सीमाएँ छूनी हैं और वहाँ किस तरह से हमारा साहित्य पहुँच रहा है, हमारे विचार पहुँच रहे हैं, उसके कुछ लाइव एग्ज़ाम्पल होंगे, कुछ अनुभव होंगे, जो आज इस मंच पे हम साझा करेंगे। हमारे आज के सत्र की अध्यक्षता कर रहे आदरणीय खटुआ जी से मैं निवेदन करूँगी कि वे अपने उद्बोधन भाषण के साथ सत्र को करेंगे। बहुत-बहुत स्वागत।
Uh, Thank you. Subject is really vast. Time is limited. When we are talking about universality of literature, human suffering, love, fight for dignity, establishing links between your soul and what you are doing physically are what human experience are all about. And good literature reflects that and reaches out. Among us, we have friends from Lithuania, Spain, Poland. For example, uh, for me, when you are talking about Spain, somebody will say Antonio Machado is my favorite poet. I'll say no, for me Vicente Alexandre is. Therefore, when we are talking about universality, that is also debatable. But when it becomes acceptable, like classic, do you think Mahabharata is good literature? Do you think Bible is good literature? Do you think Das Capital is good literature? There are many such examples. Say, for example, Poland you are talking about. My favorite is Adam Misnik. He absolutely recasts police identity. And when it reaches out, his books just catches you like you can't believe it. Translated in 60 languages. You talk about Lithuania. You can talk about Myronis. You can talk about Schema. Schema talks about organic parts of living man, and each part correlates with the other and becomes humanity, then the universality of literature comes. All of them will talk about them. There are tremendous amount of literature comes out from all the three countries. Present day, the modern literature I'm talking about. Then, when we won't have much time, each speaker will have about 10 minutes. Then we'll leave the floor open to all of you. Uh, Life is literature in first form. Literature is life in drum, diluted, depicted, and described form. That's why when they become universal, that means they have achieved something, reaching out to you, me, and common people. So, for example, when we are talking about Hindi literature or Tamil literature, they are very rich. But how come the universality has not come in India? Don't they reflect shared human experience? They do, but we have to do lots of things. There is also politics behind universality of literature. Then, as I have said before, human suffering is also common emotional determinant. There is a uh, Palestinian poet. He's not controversial. He always writes, I have nothing against Jews or anybody else. So he wrote a small poem that I'm across the uh, fence wire. I know your mother is in ICU, whose blood matches mine and she needs blood, but I can't give it to you. How can I give it to you when we are so separated by imaginary miles of distance? Let me stop here. Now, uh, I will invite Ambassador of Lithuania, uh, very eminent, speaks many Indian languages, including Hindi. And please, you can speak from there. No, please feel free. I'm comfortable here. But I can say,
Very good afternoon, there, Chair, respected panel, who are friends from different walks of life. And in the audience, I also see many friends just because I really believe in universality of literature. So when I came here as ambassador, literature became one of my areas where I thought we should actually make first steps. And for us, it's very first steps, just because it's a fact that nothing connects you better than a book. If only you translate it, make it available, because definitely not all of us, and I mean, there are so many languages, there is no one on this earth who can read all the books in originals. But I'm very honored and very happy to take part in Festival of Letters by Sahitya Academy. Second time I'm speaking here. Last year also, I absolutely enjoyed uh, which was, I mean, a session which was more focused on Indian literature, spread into Indian literature and wisdom abroad. So this time I have the opportunity to also speak about my literature, which is written in Lithuanian language, a small language spoken by 3 million in the country and another 1.5 abroad. So that would constitute one small chapter of Delhi city if you look at the population. But it's a language which is uh, a dinosaur of European languages, which has preserved very archaic, antique features of the European languages, which is why it is often recognized as as a living language very close to Sanskrit. So it's a language to Sanskrit, and it is studied at universities exactly for that value of being a specimen of history of languages. But coming back to universality, I'm so happy to see Rekha here, because just literally a month ago we had something which was very historic to Lithuania, the first reading of the first Lithuanian book being translated in Hindi. And Dr. Rekha Sethi she's just told me she's completed the first draft. But why of course, I'm so happy because I initiated that, and the day I came to see Dr. Srinivasa Rao, and I lamented the fact that while Indian literature is known and being translated and published in Lithuania, because India is known and it's such a vast literature, but we are so tiny that we are not yet capable of presenting our literature. And he very kindly offered to start with a pilot project. So, but coming to the point, I know some Hindi, I don't speak it very well, but I understand it quite well. And I had read that book in Lithuanian, in English, and when I was hearing it in Hindi, you can't imagine the emotions I went through, because I was very, I felt as it that language belonged in that book. It was just so organic. So that's what happens to us. I think literature is probably the most universal arts, because if you can pick up a book and you can't read it, until you are finished, that's, I think, the best proof. It doesn't matter. It might come for a Eastern European like me, it might come from India, Indonesia, Peru, or South Africa. It just doesn't matter. There are details of ethnographical nature, cultural nature, but they are details which you greatly enjoy. But the emotion, the relation that you develop to the book is much beyond that. And I have to say, I mean, I enjoy the cultural context a lot, and that's why I'm looking at Lakshmi ji, whom I also know for many years, and I totally enjoyed that book precisely for the ethnographic setup, because it was a very universal story of coming of age, growing up of two girls, but a country through so much of cultural context that it's very important to trace, just because it was so organically Indian. But putting it aside, it is a story that any other person would relate to because we've all had times in our histories as a nation, as people, when we were growing up, when we were fighting, all odds. And yet, when I went to Karnataka, to Badami, and I stayed in a hotel which was called Vada, I immediately remembered I called Lakshmi to say, I'm staying in a Vada, which is like a Marathi fortress sort of a farmstead, which is something that stuck with me apart from the plot and the story and the values conveyed. It was also very, very enriching. So I think, this is definitely something that needs to be done more because yes, big countries, big literature, big nations work a lot, but I think sometimes the little ones are left behind. We lack capacities to represent ourselves through literature because we're so small, but that doesn't mean our literature is somewhat less interesting, and it is a powerful, powerful medium to convey what you want to say, but ultimately to make a point that you exist as a human, as a nation, as a part of the world, which is as interesting, as valuable as anyone else. So it's a universality of impressions, but also universality of the human as such, human life and human value that gets conveyed. So, it's very difficult to be the first speaker because I was hoping I can hear others and only come in with, I don't have a scripted speech as such. But I have to say that, since I'm a diplomat, I'm not a writer as such. I have written one book, which happens to be my diary of my student years in India, but it doesn't really make me a great author. But in diplomacy also, I'm so happy to see the colleague ambassador of Spain here. I think it's hugely important to appreciate the powerful tool that a country has, which is literature, which, okay, you need an effort to translate, but then it stays forever. Nothing can destroy the translation that has already happened, as printed. It will always stay, not just the libraries, but the minds and the mindsets also, the history of human and cultural relations. So my compliments to Sahitya for bringing out such important topic, but also for serving as a laboratory of ideas, how we can, reach out to each other. Also, I think since we are in India and as always a fan of Indian literatures, I have to say that it's a country which has so many languages that, you know, it's also very important not to leave every language behind, which I think Sahitya is doing. I was recently attending a literature festival in the Northeast, which was focusing on non-written oral literatures, which I think give due to that also. While it's easy to write a book and translate, but it's not very easy for the spoken traditions, for the oral traditions to be known, acknowledged, and not to get lost. So I think this is also something we need to remember as we come to folk and tribal folk, ethnic folks that exist, which is extremely important to capture. Even though I believe in Indian tradition that you cannot capture music, it's once, and it is now and here. Indian classical, Western you can record, but Indian music, its beauty only reveals in the now and then, improvisation. So probably in oral literature is also part of the charm is lost if you write it down. But it's nevertheless very, very important to have that bridge between the well-established written traditions of countries and ethnic language groups which have had them for centuries, and those who have not had a script, that not have a tradition and habit, and are on the verge of extinction. So I think India is an amazing place where it offers both, epic traditions which have been recorded. First, they were transmitted already for thousands of years before they were recorded, thousands of years ago, but also where you still have traditions which um, are not yet sort of put on paper. But when I heard some of those Bodo myths or Naga myths or any other oral tradition, I just said, wow, I totally relate. They're very close to mine. They are very close to the people who lived in the forest, who have, were very close to nature. So we have to listen to them very much. I think I'm just throwing in several topics and let others speak because then maybe Q&As can be used to develop any topics, but it's really hard to be the first one. So I hope I was not boring. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador, for this delightful presentation. Now, let me invite Embajador Juan Antonio Pujol from Spain. All of us are familiar with the field of Spain, from Cervantes till now. Let him start.
Thank you very much for inviting me to be with you, and thank you, Monica, for opening the way. I really believe in this universality that gives literature to us. I would say that we are in the eve of a new era where we have plenty of possibilities. One of obviously of the possibility is that we have divided in multiple languages in this world, and we cannot communicate for the beginning of the humanity. And suddenly, we are living times that we will be able to communicate. It will not be a question of um, speaking one, two, three, or five languages. We will be able to communicate with all languages of the world, and this will be a real revolution. For a certain time, people were thinking this division of humanity in languages is very disturbing because it's dividing us. But in fact, every literature or every culture has developed a kind of seeing the things, of approaching to reality, of defining the things. A language, for example, like Swedish, they have 20 words for the word snow because it's so common that you have different kinds of snow. You have 20 words. A country like Bolivia that has never snow just has one word in Spanish, nieve only. So the interesting thing is that through artificial intelligence, we will be able not only to understand, to read, and to communicate with all languages of the world, and this is going to be a new era. And then we will benefit of all the literatures of the world, and not even those who have been translated. In my short life, the book that I have liked the most, the book that when I was reading, I thought it is not possible that humanity has written something so beautiful, is the book of the Adventures of Hassan el-Basri inside 1001 Nights. You know that 1001 Nights is around 5,000 pages, and there are around 170 tales. But there is one tale called The Adventures of Hassan al-Basri that you cannot imagine the beauty. And when I read that book, I thought this is really absolutely marvelous. But 5 years later, there was an interview, one of the Nobel Prizes. This time, he was Spanish Nobel Prize, and from Peru, and they asked him, "What are you writing now?" And he said, "Well, now I'm writing stories." And then they said to him, "But are you going to publish a book on stories?" And he said, "No, no, it's just for divertimento, because the most beautiful book that humanity can write on stories has already been written." And then they asked him, "Which is this book?" And he said, "The Adventures of Hassan al-Basri." Then I thought that my poor taste as amateur was backed by a real Nobel Prize. So it's to say that you don't have to find in your culture the thing that is going to impress you the most. You can find very different and very far away cultures. Obviously, in my culture, I was very touched by one book that, in my view, has a lovely title. Is the book of Pablo Neruda that says, "I confess that I have lived." And I think that is something very beautiful to say that you have really lived in this planet, that you have not transit, but you have lived, you have appreciated, you have had intensity. And I think this is the key thing in our world today. We are in an era where humanity were numbers, and we go to an era which each individual is a kind of unique source of intelligent energy. The nature has already shown us that each individual is very valuable with the fingerprints. It's very impressive that we have 8 billion people in this world, and there are 8 billion different fingerprints. So each individual is a kind of unique thing. And then we have moved from very far away. We have moved from a humanity that had to protect themselves against more powerful animals to a humanity that had to become to live together in small villages, and then we have created nations, we have created federations of nations, we have created organizations that brains different nations. So we have progressed a lot. But the new step is to consider that the nations are like rivers, as the rivers are with the sea and the waters. What is important in our planet are the seas. The rivers are interesting, but in fact, they are the channels to bring the water from the mountains, from the land to the sea. 98% of the water of the planet is sea. So the same thing with the humanity, you know. Humanity, the nations are a little bit the channels to organize this society, but we have to arrive to a final stage. The stage is this ocean that is the one humanity, not humanity divided into nations. We have to see that the states are very interesting entities to organize the human groups and to bring some kind of harmony slowly in this very big planet. But we have to go to the final stage. And when we arrive to the final stage, there will be one humanity. The key thing is the value of each individual. And we will have a humanity that will have 8 billion human beings producing different adventures of intelligence, then the power of this humanity will be grandiose. So we are in a very interesting moment, a very interesting moment that we have really progressed a lot with medicine. We have expanded our span of life. Doctors said that in fact we are anthropopithecus, that it means that we are designed to live 40 years. That is the normal lifespan of our body. In terms of medicine, of our treatments, we have gone from 40 to nearly 80, 85. People now are dying at 100, and now it's considered to go to 150. So transformation is enormous. But we have to think something, in my view, very important. We are in this planet, and we could be living in a hostile planet, in a planet where we could not use seas because there is maybe a microorganism or a fish, etc., that does not allow us to take the waters. Or we could not fly because there is a kind of gender of bird that forbids us to take advantage of the air. Or it could be areas inside the planet that we cannot. We have not a single problem. The only problem is ourselves. We are considering ourselves a very intelligent species, and we are absolutely unable to organize ourselves. So I wrote this book, Momentum, to try to get the favor of the new generation. Because what is always said is that the wars are created by the old people to use the young generation. And I want the young generation to say loudly to the politicians, we don't want any war. We want you to organize to create the new world. The new world, plenty of possibilities. I can take a plane from India, from Delhi to Los Angeles in 14 hours. I can have a surgery of the eye with a catarata in 20 minutes. We have a world full of possibilities. So I want to use my life, one, to discover at maximum what is this planet. Second, to discover at maximum what is the intelligence that is inside me. And third, maybe to give a fingerprint positive to this world. So you are the ones who have to create the frame. And I want to encourage the young people not to accept any kind of dynamic of wars, of confrontation, of weapons. We have to say we have been locked down, all the countries of the world for 3 weeks, 2 months, 5 months. So first priority has to be health. We want money invested in health massively in the world, and we want to enjoy this unique experience that we are in this planet. And I think literature opens an enormous fantastic world of different experiences that allows us to live several worlds in this life. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. As you say, universality is continuity in human history and evolution. What better example can be? Now I invite Lakshmi Puri for her.
Thank you very much. Namaskar. Thank you to Sahitya Academy for inviting me. And I'm very happy to be with the distinguished panel here who represent the duality that I myself have gone through and am experiencing right now of being a diplomat and uh, someone who has ventured into the literary world. So let me begin with saying that uh, in India, which is a universe in itself, we are trying to discover the universality of literature to bind us, to integrate us. And in the same way, we are doing that with the world. And I think nothing illustrates that better than the Sanskrit saying, Atmano mokshayartham jagatam hitaya cha. So it's, universal literature, which is based on shared experience, is one of the key aspects of that is about self-realization, particularly fiction. When you go into this journey, the internal life and external life exploration, what you're doing is that you are seeking salvation for yourself, but also you are trying to ensure the welfare of the world. You are doing good for the world. So that is what is universality of literature and shared human experience. And I believe that it offers great literature, offers timeless and universal insights into shared human experience, irrespective of where you are in the world, within countries, whether you are in villages or towns or mega cities, and which culture you belong. And it is with this perspective that I wrote my first book. And many people said, why someone like me who has spent more than half my life outside India as an Indian diplomat, but all back to my roots, and written a book which is so rooted and grounded in Indian culture, as Diana said. And in particular, one part of that very rich and wonderful part of the Indian culture and literature, which is Marathi literature, which has not really been explored that much by Indian writers in English. Now, the idea of universality is an important and powerful one in storytelling. And it is said that uh, to be universal, a book, poem, novel must engage with things, and I'm quoting Villa Cather in this. It has to engage with things of permanence. And things of permanence, what she means, what the author means is that it must endure in both time and space. And these are human nature and the transcendentals. And by transcendentals is meant truth, beauty, goodness, and how they manifest themselves in many ways, and yet, and these are part of, they are kind of humming through at the very heart of reality, and yet they manifest themselves in many ways. And in that literature is universality found. And that literature grapples with moral and ethical questions, making readers reflect on values and belief systems, critical thinking, existential themes. I think the ambassador referred to that, existential themes of, uh, of how we are, why do we, the purpose of life, uh, all key questions of death, purpose, identity, relationships, place in society, in the nation, in the universe. You were talking about the planet, our place in the planet. Increasingly, literature is also looking at issues like climate change. So I think that is a key aspect of the universality of literature. And I have tried to use also, we were talking about customs, cultural mores, legends, and myths. How they are also, they have a universal resonance because they enable an insight into cultures which were closed to the rest of the world, and yet they act as bridges. And there are characters, and descriptions that remain with you, even though you may be an Indian and you are reading Tolstoy. I remember the death scene in Tolstoy of Prince Andrei. That remained with me for years. And then in my book, when I was writing the death scene of the mother of these young girls, it was very much reverberating in my mind. So, these are the kind of connections you make when you read and write universal literature. And then there is the beauty and power of language, poetry, arts, theater, music, that literature encompasses, as you rightly pointed out. And I have in the novel used Marathi theater, literature, music. I've brought to life all of that. And then there are the issues of, I want to talk about also what is considered universal so far. The Western canon is considered the totality of universality. But I think writers, Indian writers in English, Latin American writers in Spanish, African writers in French and English have saved the Western canon from being fossilized, or the universal literature to be fossilized into conceptions of Western universality. So I think that is a very important aspect that we have to really realize, that in uh, in trying to make, for example, many people have asked me, why have you written in English? It happens that I was brought up uh, to, I read and write and think in English, but I dream in Marathi and Hindi, and I pray in Sanskrit. So it is all of those elements, the richness of all those things that I bring. So in a way, I'm trying to enrich the global garden of English and also to nativize it in some ways, as have other writers in English have done from here and elsewhere. And then there is the issue of returning the Western gaze. As Upali Uparijita has said about my novel, we being judged. We look at benchmarks that are Western to judge ourselves. But we are also establishing, because I'm very much drawing upon Indian civilization values and in many ways returning to Western gaze in this. And lastly, whilst writers like me want to very much draw upon Indian civilizational values, which are in themselves universal, we are also very much representing what certainly in my case, because I was with the United Nations, and I've been dealing with the United Nations since 1981, universal human values of human rights, truth, anti, anti-racism, equality, justice, freedom, gender equality and women's empowerment, youth power. And in my novel, I very much have talked about youth power and the ability of youth to reimagine themselves, to reimagine their society, to reimagine their country and the world. As the ambassador said, the youth are the ones who are going to really make us, give us hope. And literature is very much, universal literature is very much about hope, giving hope. As I've said in the book, it is about achieving the impossible, the little ant that flies into the sky and swallows the sun. He can make miracles if we keep faith, if we dare, and if we persist. So I think we really must uh, support the movement for universality of literature. And these kind of exchanges are really important. And I'm glad that the Science Academy is bringing us all together. If I can end with the recitation of a poem, you will very well see has a universal resonance. It's an anthem of empowerment that I have translated from Marathi. ईश्वराच्या जगत्कारणाच्या हरे तुझी पूर्णता मंगल बोला हवे ते मला काय त्याचे पुरे जाणतो मी माझे बळ. So jauntily holding an elephant calf in one hand, in the other, with a mewling lion cub I stand, the majestic tiger half dead with fear, from his cave cautiously does peer. These mountains are mere rocks to be seen. The waves of the ocean are like trembling leaves. Recognizing myself, my name I proudly bear. I'm truly self realized and self aware. Of a mirror I have no need, or a path free of stone and weed. Am I not complete and auspicious? Am I not complete and auspicious? The purpose of God's creation felicity. And this is particularly important for women, because they are often the ones who are not considered so auspicious when they are born in many countries, including ours. It used to be. So we have to fight that, and this anthem is also for that. The purpose of God's creation, felicities, I have no more regard for your opinion. I well know my own strength and my dominion. Thank you.
Thank you. She has highlighted the role of external reader so well. Now let me invite Monica uh, Burans.
Dobry wieczór, namaskar, vanakkam, adab, sat sri akal. सबसे पहले इस सभागार में आज एक बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण इंसान उपस्थित है, प्रोफेसर हरिमोहन शर्मा जी के, जिन्होंने हमें हिंदी सिखाई। तो ये जो हमारी सफर जो है, जो हमारी यात्रा है, इन्हीं से शुरू हुआ, इसलिए उनको सबसे समर्पित करना चाहूंगी अपनी ये छोटी सी प्रस्तुति। And I also feel very honored and humbled to be here among you, my and co-panelist, and Anamika ji, who's also sitting in the audience, and Rao sir, and all the eminent writers, intellectuals, and all of us here who are true literature lovers. It's a great feast and it's a great opportunity for all of us to meet our beloved writers and to learn about them some more. So I would like, because I'm a teacher and I would like to keep my time limit of 10 minutes, I have written something that I would like to present in front of you. I would like to start with two quotations that define literature and its universality in by two different metaphors. One is a poem by Adam Zagayevsky. I'm going to read it in a Hindi translation that was done by Maria Puri, who is sitting here, and by me, and it was published by Sahitya Akademi in 2014 with an amazing support and help of Rao sir, who is sitting here with us. So I'm going to read it in Hindi because I think it's a beautiful definition of what literature and in particular poetry is. पराई सुंदरता, पराई सुंदरता में, केवल पराई सुंदरता में है दिलासा, केवल पराई सुंदरता में है दिलासा, पराए संगीत और पराई कविता में। मुक्ति है केवल दूसरों के पास, भले ही एकांत लगता हो अफीम सा। मुक्ति है केवल दूसरों के पास, भले ही एकांत लगता हो अफीम सा। दूसरे नरक नहीं है अगर उन्हें देखो सुबह, जब उनके माथे साफ हो सपनों के ढूले हुए। इसलिए सोचता रहता हूं कौन सा शब्द प्रयोग करूं, वो या तुम। हर एक वो लगता है किसी एक तुमसे विश्वासघात, पर बदले में पराई कविता में दिखती है ईमानदारी एक सच्चे संवाद की। पराई कविता में दिखती है ईमानदारी एक सच्चे संवाद की। And the second definition that I would like to present in front of you is by Olga Tokarczuk, who is an eminent Polish writer and also the Nobel Prize winner. And in her Nobel speech, she was talking about literature as if it was a being that has to look at from the perspective of tenderness. So I'm now quoting a passage from her speech. Tenderness is the most modest form of love. Tenderness is spontaneous and disinterested. It goes far beyond empathetic fellow feeling. Instead, it is conscious, though perhaps slightly melancholy, common sharing of fate. Tenderness is deep emotional concern about another being, its fragility, its unique nature, and its lack of immunity to suffering and the effects of time. Tenderness perceives the bonds that connect us, the similarities and sameness between us. It is a way of looking that shows the world as being alive, living, interconnected, cooperating with, and codependent on itself. Literature is built on tenderness toward any being other than ourselves. Once again, literature is built on tenderness toward any being other than ourselves. It is the basic psychological mechanism of the novel. Thanks to this miraculous tool, the most sophisticated means of human communication, our experience can travel through time, reaching those who have not yet been born, but who will one day turn to what we have written, the stories we told about ourselves and our world. I end quote here. Literature has always been a proof that human beings, regardless of time or place, experience life in ways that are deeply interconnected. It transcends linguistic, cultural, and historical barriers, speaking to emotions, aspirations, and dilemmas that are universal. But at the same time, it remains a very intimate conversation between a writer, a poet, and a reader. Whether through an ancient story of Mahabharata, an epic tale of humanity, poems of Akka Mahadevi or Mirabai that create a space for women to share their experiences, or contemporary novels of Olga Tokarczuk, which interweave unique Polish history with universal human experiences. Literature reveals that our joys and sorrows, hopes and fears are not isolated experiences, but part of a larger human story. Love and separation, loyalty and betrayal, hope and despair are part of a larger story. And themselves, readers can find in their favorite stories across various civilizations and times. Society evolves, but the fundamental nature of human emotions remains unchanged. Meghaduta, a tale of longing written centuries ago, can still stir the heart of a modern reader. Just as Red Samadhi, a contemporary novel, can echo the struggles of people from distant eras. This ability to transcend time and space makes literature a bridge between generations and cultures, proving that at the core of our individual lives lies a shared human experience that binds us all together. Uh, and I would like to share with you one more quote by Olga Tokarczuk that discusses the issue of involvement with the most crucial questions which are related to our existence. I quote Olga Tokarczuk. Thus, literature poses questions that cannot be answered with the help of Wikipedia, since it goes beyond just information and events, referring directly to our experiences. Only literature is capable of letting us go deep into the life of another human being, understand their reasons, share their emotions, and experience their fate. End quote. The pain of unfulfilled love in Hiranja, the existential questioning in Shekhar Ekjivni, the struggle against injustice in Jutan, or the search for identity in Anya Se Ananya, these themes echo across cultures and generations. A reader from any background can see themselves reflected in these narratives, finding comfort in the realization that they are not alone in their emotions or struggles. Literature affirms that human emotions and conflicts are not confined to one culture or era. It allows individuals to connect with characters who lived centuries ago or on the other side of the world, forging an emotional link between reader and writer. Be it Sima from Miss Samuel, Ek Yehudi Gatha by Sheila Rohekar, or Janina Duszejko from a detective novel by Olga Tokarczuk, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. The universality gives literature its power. Not only does it reflect reality, but it also shapes how we understand ourselves and others. It reassures us that the challenges we face are not unique to us, but have been experienced, endured, and expressed by countless others before us. In this way, literature becomes more than just words on a page. It becomes a shared human voice that speaks across time and place. Moreover, literature fosters empathy by allowing us to step into the lives of others. When we read stories from different cultures or historical periods, we gain insight into perspectives different from our own, broadening our understanding of humanity. The power of storytelling lies in its ability to dissolve barriers. making the foreign familiar and the distant intimate. A novel set in partition-torn India, like Judha Sach, or war-torn Poland, like Diamonds and Ashes by Jerzy Andrzejewski, may help a modern reader grasp the realities of displacement and loss. Just as ancient biblical stories and the Indian epics can resonate with anyone who has faced adversity. This power of literature to create deep emotional connections is what makes it an essential tool for fostering cultural understanding. In an era marked by division, literature acts as a unifying force, reminding us that despite differences and various circumstances, we all share the same fundamental desires to be heard, to be understood, and to find meaning in our experiences. Thus, it serves as a bridge not only between past and present, but also between individuals and communities, encouraging dialogue and mutual respect. Through literature, we are reminded that no matter where we come from or what language we speak, our stories, our struggles, and dreams are deeply intertwined, making us part of a vast and interconnected human experience. Through its universality, literature connects us across time and space, reminding us that despite the differences in language, geography, or traditions, the human experience remains profoundly shared. The emotions and struggles that shaped the lives of people centuries ago continue to find echoes in the hearts of modern readers, demonstrating that our fundamental desire for love, belonging, understanding, and purpose have remained unchanged. Whether in a Greek tragedy, a Sanskrit play, medieval poem, a contemporary novel, literature carries with it the imprint of humanity's collective consciousness, allowing us to engage with perspectives beyond our own and recognize our commonalities. And I would like to end my short presentation, if you allow me, with another excerpt from a very short poem by Wisława Szymborska, again a well-known Polish writer, a Polish poet, who is also the Nobel Prize winner. And the title, I'm just going to read a few lines from it. The title of the poem in Polish is Możliwości, and I'm going to read it in Hindi translation, and I would like you to pay attention to the last line, 2 lines. संभावनाएं मुझे बेहतर लगती है फिल्में मुझे बेहतर लगती है बिल्लियां मुझे वार्ता नदी के किनारे के बांझ बेहतर लगते हैं मुझे दोस्तोयेव्स्की से डिकेंस बेहतर लगता है मुझे बेहतर लगता है मेरा लोगों को पसंद करना बजाय मेरा पसंद करना मानवता को धन्यवाद dziękuję bardzo
Sorry for absolute paucity of time. Otherwise, when we're talking about sharing human experiences and universality of literature, the role of translation is also very, very important. So important, you cannot believe it, the depth. And second is the role of eternal reader. How, cutting across time and space, the story he picks up and adopts as his own. All these things we could not discuss today. We have the last Dr. Vijay Kumar. After that, we have brief interviews. Thank you.
First of all, the mandatory thank yous to Sahitya Academy for inviting me to this Festival of Letters. This is my second participation in the Festival of Letters. Unlike the majority of my co-panelists, I'm not a diplomat, so I don't have to be diplomatic. I'm under no compulsion to be diplomatic. I can speak about the universe, as in the title. I can speak about the universe only from my local position as a reader. Hence, a short autobiographical account. As far as as far back as I can remember, I have always enjoyed reading stories. Of course, I read them in my home language, Telugu. I read rather indiscriminately. Stories from Chandamama and Balamitra, serials in weeklies that my mother cut out and stitched together, and novels my father read late into the night. But it was only as an undergraduate student of English literature that I was introduced to this category called literature with a capital L. Shakespeare to Shaw, Milton to Eliot, this was literature proper. And we were encouraged to locate ourselves in this rather unfamiliar universe. Around the same time that I discovered literature, I also discovered universality, an entirely new concept that never came up in our conversations about the books we read. It was only much later, as we read writers like Achebe and Anantamurthy, Narayan and Nagarkar, that this universe of literature began to appear a little familiar and relatable. This is not to say that we did not enjoy Shakespeare, nor that we did not mourn with Milton. But to be fair, I don't think Shakespeare ever intended his line, the famous line from his sonnet, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day," to ring true in all climes and all times. Nor do I believe that Wordsworth thought his dancing daffodils would flash upon the inward eye of everyone everywhere. Yet, the appeal of a Shakespeare or a Wordsworth lies in their contextual specificity, and I don't see why the same should not be the case with any literature anywhere. As has been mentioned by the chair at the beginning, and also my co-panelists, that there is, of course, the politics behind this universalism. And today, well, that's not me. Um, However, today I think it is very important for us to look closely at this category called universalism at a time when universalism is the other name for majoritarianism. For us, universalism has always been a one-way street. It has been, and to a large extent continues to be, conditioned by weird norms. I'm using weird as an acronym for Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic norms. In other words, weird norms. Universalism has been the other name for Eurocentrism. And the dangers of majoritarianism, the powerful becoming the universal, is all with us now. Whether it is knowledge systems, whether it is the periodization of history, everything becomes universal, which is essentially Eurocentric. What is needed today, I believe, is that let's, the danger of homogenization is the erasure of specificities. Even a global pandemic is not experienced similarly. So, indigenous movements are not context independent, and they cannot be compared across cultures and across geographies. And let me end with three different statements. I'm not quoting them exactly, but summarizing them. The first one is, of course, the well-known warning by Chinua Achebe, the Nigerian writer, who wanted the word universalism to be banned till it becomes more inclusive of various other cultures. Similarly, Sujit Mukherjee, writing about the Indian literary history, towards an Indian literary history, once said that we will talk about Indian literature only when we are familiar with what is written in other literatures. Similarly, in more recent times, the again Nigerian writer Adichie once said, when somebody, and this happened in a literary festival, I won't name the festival, it happened in a literary festival when the moderator was going gaga over globalization. She said that we will talk about globalization when labor can move as freely as capital. So, to really understand what human experiences are universal and which are product of individual cultures, we need a large, well-conducted understanding of people from many different cultures. However, even in today's age of AI, decent cross-cultural analyses of this concept of universalism are very few. Just to give you one quick example, recently GenAI was asked to uh, produce pictures of poor children, and AI could only bring up pictures of black children as poor, malnourished children. So this is that even in the age of AI, we are still talking about universalism, where stereotypes are still alive and kicking. So let me end by saying that a truly universal work is one that actually alters our very notion of the universe. And this is the real universalism, which I think can happen only from being local. And let me end by saying that universalism is not a writer's compulsion, but a reader's necessity. Thank you so much.
Now we have time, about 5 minutes. Some of you can give comments, interjections, or brief on the subject. Please.
I would like to ask, given the current population's impatience reading material, they have more different screens and all. So, how do you read about their experience of the universe literature being transported to the screen in terms of video or audiovisual material? How is that access given more accessibility?
Before I invite Professor Kumar to speak, say point is, post-COVID, global readership has gone down by 22%. Publication of fiction and poetry has gone down by 18%. We are not talking about that. What we are talking about, local to global, is that an issue? Two, is technology an issue for universality of literature? Three, how do you define shared human experience? When you go to Israel, Hamas, that is different. When you talk about India, poverty, that is different. When you are talking about Lithuania, big country, they are thinking, that is different. Therefore, come, you are
I think this is a needless worry, I would say, because every new technology has been seen with suspicion. I'll just give you a parallel example. For example, when television came, right, everybody said, oh, this is the end of cinema, right? But today, cinemas finds a second life in television, right? So I don't think that the reading experience is different. The reading medium may be different, right? I don't think, therefore, I think this kind of a death of the book is far too early for us. Yeah.
Please. Okay.
I think that what is very interesting in life is to have diversity. So, as I cannot share very much this view of how important is local, I have always to say something for the importance of how important is universal and global. You know, in my life, things that have been very far away of me have been very important. As I said, I was very impressed with 1001 Nights. I was very impressed by reading Tagore in India when I had not been in India. So to think that my village, that my city was a really important thing for me, it has been really a very poor life. So my view is very different. We are in a world that we can have all possibilities open. Why we are going to put gates to our existence? Thank you.
Please.
वो आपने कोट किया था पूरे जान तो समाज से पढ़ो तो मैं ये जानता हूँ व्यवहार में मेरी ताकत को मैंने व्यक्तिगत ताकत को या किसी व्यक्तिगत ताकत को निकला जाता ये जो योगाभ्यास है वो आप किस दृष्टि से देखें?
तो आप उस कविता के बारे में बोल रहे हैं कि
आपका जो
यूनिवर्सल अच्छा so should I say in English or
Whatever you are comfortable with.
yeah, okay. So no, of course it is about identity. Universal, some of the universal quests that universal literature covers is about identity, about truth seeking, justice seeking, as I mentioned, beauty, and everything that is self-realizing. So this anthem is about self-realization as opposed to oppression, as opposed to imposition and denial of identity. That is what it is about. I well know my own strength, my dominion. That is the assertion here. Pure zanto meets a maze bada.
And also opening up.
Just maybe to give hope to the assertion that books don't die, I can actually say that in a country of 3 million, we are obsessed with books. And we have just, imagine it's difficult to publish something, whatever it is, in a market which only has 3 million readers. But it's amazing. We just had last weekend, we had our annual book fair, and the crowds there are only getting bigger. They have to expand pavilion, pavilion after pavilion. And that's, again, I mean, you have digital books, it's just expanded, but not at the detriment. So I always have, I come from the family of publishers. My father-in-law and my brother-in-law were all in publishing, and as we enter that era from the 90s where, we got our freedom back and, the publishing sort of came up, but there were always hardships, material hardships. And every 2 or 3 years, somebody would forecast the death of a book, saying that, no, you won't survive because it's an extremely small market. And I mean, look at what happens. And you have in mind that the youngsters are like almost born with fluent English sort of readership. They are able to basically read everything online, and yet children's book is the most flourishing industry in Lithuania. I think there is not just, I mean, we don't need to answer that. It's an example that it can flourish life, and there would be means probably through innovations to add to that, not to diminish.
Can I just add to that very quickly that, when my book was first published, I was told that typically in India, any English fiction is, you're lucky if you can get past the 1,000 mark. You're lucky if, if you can ever cross 5,000 in 2 years. And it was a surprise that within the 3 months, we got 10,000 books. But that shows that there is readership, even for English books, but not enough, not enough. Because I think there is one, what the gentleman said is absolutely right. There is a preference for the short narrative, and this is a 412 pages book. So I was very happy that young people have read it, particularly men and women, and that is a good sign. But of course, we need to increase readership and the habit of reading, which we grew up with in our generation.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank my panel for such an insightful discussion. And, it resulted in so many questions coming out from the audiences. This is the best part of it. And I feel that literature is basically a touch, a human touch. So, irrespective of the language, irrespective of the place, irrespective of the people, it's basically your insight of the people, somebody was saying your dreams, your struggle, and your expectations. So this is all about literature, I feel, and this has been such a successful discussion program. I thank you so much. And I would also like to request my people, just after this, in this side Wala hall, we have got Samavartan lecture by Upmanyu Chatterjee, eminent English writer. Please join us in that room. Thank you so much. And this is for the evening today.